Hey, everybody, and welcome to Adapt or Perish, episode 116, Clue. We'll be breaking out the board, dealing out the cards, and setting up the pieces in just a moment, but first, let's talk about our next episode. If there's something our listeners have demanded we discuss more than any other topic, it's sports. Well, we've read your never-ending emails, messages, and tweets, and we can't say no any longer. Jeremy, you might ask, are you being sarcastic? And to that, I say, great question. Either way, in our next episode, we'll be taking a look at the classic Angels in the Outfield. We'll be discussing both the original 1951 movie, starring Paul Douglas and Janet Leigh, and its 1994 Walt Disney Pictures remake, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Danny Glover, and Christopher Lloyd. That'll be out in 2 weeks on Tuesday, May 24th. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections about today's episode or any others that you'd like to hear on the show, remember to email adaptorperishcast@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, we'd love it if you would share that with the world by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. We're also on Patreon at patreon.com/adaptcast. We've got a patron-only community and our bi-weekly bonus show, Adapt or Perish Plus, with episodes releasing every Tuesday between episodes of this show. We hope you check it out. Show notes from this and all other episodes can be found at adaptorperishcast.com. And with that, on with the show, Adapt or Perish, episode 116, Clue. Hello and welcome to Adapt or Perish, a podcast about adaptation. I'm Jeremy Latour.
I'm Ari Lipshaw, and today we will be talking about Clue.
This is one that I've been looking forward to for a very, very long time. I feel like since episode 1, we have always said, we're not just going to do books to movies or TV shows to musicals. We're going to do, like, video games.
We've done video games.
We did video game.
We did the Godfather video game.
Yes.
Is that the only one?
That's the only one.
Okay.
And it was... but we haven't done anything that started as a video game.
That's not true. We did the Robin Hood video game.
That's... Okay, yes, you're
Remember
right.
I watched a Let's Play, like
Yes.
a 3-hour Let's Play?
Twice now we have discussed video games.
Yep.
But never have we done anything that was based on a video game.
Or a board game.
And a board game was the other thing we always talked about.
Yeah.
And, like, Clue has been on our list since the very beginning.
Yes.
And it took us well over 100 episodes before we got to it.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever had to play a board game as part of our research for the show.
I don't feel like I've ever needed to play a board game at all. I've always wanted to play board games, but it's the first time I've ever been required to play a board game.
Yes. I have sometimes required you to play a board game. Like, we're playing Betrayal at House on the Hill.
That's different.
If you listen to this episode and you're like, I remember Clue. Clue's not that fun. You should, instead of Clue, if you, like, this is like a do this, not that. Instead of Clue, you should play Betrayal at House on the Hill. It's
entirely different.
There's a murder and there's a house and there's rooms.
What I'm saying is the mechanic is completely different. They're not the same game at all.
But
there is a house.
It will scratch that itch.
And people die.
It's one of the most fun games ever.
We're not like full-on board game people.
No.
But we enjoy board games. And Betrayal at House on the Hill is our number one board game.
It's different every time. It's really fun. Munchkin's also really fun.
Munchkin's a great standby.
Yeah.
I also like Rummy Cube. Anyway.
I like Rummy Cube.
Let's keep going.
Now we do puzzles.
So Clue. I think the reason why it took so long for us to do it is because as excited as I was to do it, and as much as I love the movie Clue, and like, it's weird. I actually feel a little bad that I'm the first person saying I love Clue in the episode because, like, your love of Clue eclipses mine.
Mm-hmm. Clue the movie.
Clue the movie.
Yes.
But I don't like the board game.
You famously hate the board game of Clue.
So I wasn't looking forward to it because I would have to play Clue. But we did, and it was fun.
Yeah.
Now, before we get into it, do you feel like there's anything else, any other banter that we need to do before we start talking about this episode?
I mean, this isn't really banter, and we had talked about, like,
do you want to do any banter that will bum people out?
We had talked about saving this for the bonus show. We're fine. The podcast is fine. The state of our relationship and the podcast are both fine.
As is our son.
As is our son. As are all human people in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
We do have some bad news about our dog.
Our dog, Oscar, who has been a fixture on this show
Lo these many years.
Since episode number 1, so many times has he interrupted our recordings.
So many times.
It's funny, in a lot of our earlier recordings, like before Calvin was born, we would record right around when he would, like, it was leading up to his dinner time.
Mm-hmm.
So he would interrupt our recordings like all the time.
Yeah, so you can hear a lot of those early episodes go like, okay, we got to go because our dog wants his dinner. And
we're back.
And we're back, yeah. Just a true companion, like the true third host of the show. He was always silently or not so silently in the room, either under our feet or sleeping in his bed. We had to put him down. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah, he was 14. He was real old.
He was real old, and maybe a content warning for like old sick dog content. We'll just forgive us, just indulge us for a moment to talk about our sweet, sweet old dog.
It was the vet.
The vet
with the pink syringe.
Yeah.
In the exam room. We watch a lot of Dr. Pol.
Yeah, and when he comes in with the pink syringe, you know it's not good news. And then we literally started laughing in the vet's office because I was like, it is a pink syringe. He just
laughing through the
tears. He was just at the point where we did not think he could really see or hear. And like every time he would get up and down, it just looked so painful. And
fell over a lot.
He fell down a lot. I had an appointment for him like in 2 weeks, and I called and I was like, I think I need to bring him in now because he stopped eating.
Mm-hmm.
And I took him in on a Monday morning, and the vet was like, yeah, I mean, we can try some pain medication, but what you're describing is like cognitive decline. And I hadn't really thought about cognitive decline. I had thought he couldn't see. And that's why he was like getting lost in the house and like getting trapped under tables and chairs and just going like, help me, I don't like this. So we took him home, and like 36 hours later, I was like, he is not better. We took him back to the vet, and the vet was like, I mean,
it was one of those things where I was going to take him into the vet.
Yeah.
And then you said, should I go? And I was like, yeah, why not? Just to be on the safe side, why don't you go? And I think we both knew that there was a really good chance that was going to be the time.
Yeah, and there was about an hour and a half between calling the vet and having to go in that we had a hard conversation about how we thought the
day was going
to go. And I just remember saying to you, like, I just don't want to put him in the car and come back without him. And that is what happened.
Yeah.
It's time. He was 14. It was very sad. So anyway, guys, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to bum everybody out. Jeremy's just staring at me.
Sweetie, I'm really sorry your dog died.
Hey, sweetie.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry your dog died.
I know. I appreciate that.
It sucks.
Sorry for bumming everybody out.
Yeah, I think we just had some stuff we wanted to get out. And I'm sorry this is the dead dog episode tacked on to the beginning of Clue, which is fun.
I mean, yeah, but it's about death.
You know what? Appropriately.
Yeah.
It is about death.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair enough. What a good segue.
Also, I'm pretty sure our dog is currently haunting us. So let's move on to this board game.
Ooh.
Shall we?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, so we're going to need to... let me actually establish what some of the guardrails are for this, because we could have gone crazy with this one because there were a lot of Clue derivative board games and video games and things like that. We're keeping it a little simple, and we're sticking to the things we normally talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we are starting with the board game. We played it. We have things to talk about. We are, of course, going to talk about the 1985 movie, which is near and dear to both of our hearts.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a few other things we're going to talk about in the middle. Again, like we're sticking to like TV shows and maybe a musical.
We get a good variety.
Yeah.
Yeah, a good variety.
But that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about any of the other versions of the game or anything like that. Just so in case anyone was like desperately expecting us to do like 2-hour deep dive into like how board games are adapted into other board games.
No.
I'm not saying we shouldn't have done it. I'm just saying we didn't do it.
Didn't do that.
So you shouldn't expect that.
But there are many. I mean, I believe we had the Simpsons Clue growing up.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever had the classic game, but we'll get into it.
I played it at a friend's house. I remember when I was a kid, and boy, I just hated it. I hated it because I didn't understand it. Like, do you ever see... Okay, so let's talk about Wordle for a second.
Yeah.
Do you ever see people tweeting about, like, can someone please help me with Wordle? And they've used 5 words in a row that have E's, even though the first word they tried had an E, and Wordle told them there's no E in this word. And people are like, the game is telling you what to guess and what not to guess, and you're not listening.
Yeah.
That's kind of how people probably would have viewed me playing Clue.
Yeah.
I thought it was just you guess.
You didn't quite understand the strategy.
I didn't understand the strategy.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that you could figure out who done it in what room with what weapon.
Yeah.
I didn't get it.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that. So I hated the game. Now that we have played it many years later, now I understand the game, and I even almost won.
Almost.
I did not win.
I think I have the opposite problem, which is that I have to be absolutely 100% sure and not take any risks in guessing. I used to really like those puzzles as a kid. God, how to describe them? It's like a grid, and there's like 6 different conditions. Like there's 6 names of people, and there's 6 colors of shirts, and there's 6 like rooms that they're in.
Mhm.
And it looks like a grid, and it's like Johnny is wearing a red shirt, but he sat next to someone with a blue shirt. And George isn't wearing a green shirt, and you have to like mark off in the grid and figure out based on the list of conditions what it has to be. I'm describing this very poorly. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I'm just stuck on Wordle.
Okay. Hang on one second.
My co-host is actively looking up that type of game. While she's doing that, I will say Wordle actually helped me figure out how to play Clue. Because once I started thinking of all of the potential, okay,
It looks like this.
I'm seeing
Apparently
a
it
picture.
is
I've
called
never
a-
seen this before.
Apparently it is called a logic grid puzzle. If you if you Google
Does
that.
what it says on the tin.
Your goal is to figure out which options are linked together based on a series of given clues. You've never seen these? I had whole books of these.
No,
They were super fun.
never once.
All right,
I
fair enough.
believe you.
Yeah. But that's kind of what Clue is like. It's like you have to whittle down the options,
Yeah.
obviously, until you get to a final conclusion.
So what you're saying is you enjoyed that when you were a kid.
I did, but I guess what I'm saying is I had to get to the point where I knew absolutely 100% what the answer was and was not guessing on anything. And so I would wait too long.
Yeah.
Maybe we should just give a quick, brief description in case there is anyone within the sound of our voices that does not know the game Clue, which is, again, not out of the realm of possibility. I understand it is popular in the UK. I know it is popular.
The game Clue is not popular in the UK at all.
Under the name Cluedo.
Mm-hmm. Do
Which
you know why it's called Cluedo?
It's.
I can tell you exactly what it is because I did some research.
Go ahead.
So the history of the board game Cluedo was originally devised in 1943 by British board game designer Anthony E. Pratt, and it was first manufactured in the UK in 1949 by British board game and card game manufacturer Waddingtons. Now, when Pratt presented it to Waddingtons, there was an executive there named Norman Watson. He's the one that bought the game.
Okay.
He's also the one that named the game.
Okay.
Cluedo is a play on the word clue
And the
and
word
the game Ludo.
Right.
Which is a game which I think most Americans would know the variant Parcheesi.
Gotcha.
And Ludo is Latin for I play. So it's clue game.
Yeah.
I play clue game. That's why it's called Cluedo.
Okay.
And then when it was licensed in the US by Parker Brothers, they were like, the fuck is this? We're renaming it Clue. Well, because obviously, like, if in your country the game Ludo is popular, Cluedo is a fun thing.
Right.
But in America,
it would have to be called Clucheesy.
Clucheesy. And the thing is, now that I'm hearing you say it out loud, I think it's brilliant. But apparently they did not think so at the time. So he was like, fuck it, we're calling it Clue.
Great.
I say he, Parker of Parker Brothers, whoever it was that made that decision.
Yes.
Clue is currently owned by Hasbro,
Mhm.
which is going to come up later when we talk about a recent TV show.
Great.
But yeah, do you want to describe the gameplay? Would you like me to describe the gameplay?
I will describe the gameplay.
Okay.
You can play with 2 to 6 players, as with many board games. There is a board, which is fashioned like an old house, and there's a bunch of spaces, and there's a number of rooms, like the hall, the library, the conservatory, whatever. What is it? Six different rooms,
Something like that,
you can be
yeah.
in.
What is it? It's like 6 characters, 6 rooms, 6 weapons.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So, and there's there's 6 different weapons: the gun, the rope, the wrench, the lead pipe, the candlestick.
The wrench?
The-
You mean the spanner?
Oh, the spanner, whatever. And there are these little fashioned objects, which actually you don't need to play the game even a little. They're just fun. because you do move
I
them
think
around
you've
the
just
board.
described half of what every game is made up
Yeah.
of. You don't need this to play
You
the
don't need
game,
this,
but it makes it,
but it has like no function.
fun.
It has no function. It just makes it fun.
Yeah.
And then you have your character pieces, and all the characters are named after a color. So you've got Mrs. Peacock, you've got your Mrs. White,
Peacock
or
is not a
do
color, is it?
you? You've
Is
got
peacock a color?
Peacock Blue.
Okay.
You've got your Professor Plum. You've got your Mr. Green, or I believe in Cluedo it is the Reverend Green.
Yes.
Oh, and there's a bunch of cards, and each card has a suspect. There's been a murder, and you have to find out who
Someone killed Mr.
Someone
Body.
killed Mr. Body, and you have to figure out who killed him and where and with what. And you're moving around the board, and you're trying to find out who might have done it and where and with what. And each of you have cards in your hands, and there is a dossier in the center of the board with the correct solution, and you have to figure out what the solution is, and whoever figures it out first wins the game. I don't think we need to go into more details on gameplay than that. Even that might be too much.
It might be, but okay.
I had not played this game in many years and remembered thinking it was okay. You had not played this game in many years and remembered not liking it.
Fucking hated it.
And we needed a third person. First of all, we needed to acquire a copy of the game, which we did. I sent out a Facebook message to our little neighborhood chat and was like, does anybody have Clue? Because I figured someone would, and someone did. So we borrowed Clue from our neighbors. And
we found out it was a newer version of the game
that
has like a whole new mechanic in it that makes it easier.
Well, I don't know about easier, but it certainly makes it more fun because you get to do more stuff. I guess easier too because you get extra clues and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. The whole thing is that like we're going to give you clues. We're just going to make people reveal things whenever we want to.
Yeah.
Which I could understand if someone was like a Clue purist, they would say that is bullshit. I didn't care.
Yes.
And we decided, like, we opened it up and looked, and it was like, this is the new edition that adds these things. And we both kind of looked at each other and we were like, should we care about? No, this is fine. Let's play Clue.
We were like, well, let's play. We have to play. And then we did notice it later on as we were playing in the instructions that it literally says, if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. You don't have to use these cards. But we were already doing it, so it's fine. And so we acquired the game. We acquired
a person,
a friend. Did she give us permission to say her name?
I don't know if Afton let us say her name.
She did. I think she did sign a verbal release to allow us to say her name and possibly a recording of her voice.
She allowed us to record the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know what I'm actually going to put in right now? I'm going to put in one of two things. I'm going to do a little drop in afterwards. I'm going to put in either a few selections from our recording of playing the game Clue, or I'm going to put in me saying, none of it turned out to be that good for a podcast. And then we'll be right back to our show. Hey, everybody. Jeremy from the future. Here's the deal. It's pretty fun, but none of it really made sense to pull out and put in this episode. We are going to release it as a bonus show for patrons. So just another reason to become a patron if you're interested in hearing that. But if you're not interested, do not worry. You're not missing out on anything vital for this episode. Anyway, back to the show.
Well, I, for one, cannot wait to find out what we all just heard.
But we played it with our friend Afton.
We played it with our friend Afton. We got a babysitter, a.k.a. my dad, and my dad was... I was like, Dad, can you come over on a Monday night and stay with Calvin while he's sleeping? And my dad was like, what now? To do what? You're going to do what? For the podcast?
We have to go play Clue for the podcast.
We have to go play Clue for the podcast.
Sweetie, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What was your experience like playing this goddamned game?
I mean, here's the deal.
Yeah?
Here's the deal. For the first time in many, many, many months, we were in a different room than our child and had a babysitter. We weren't at work. We were in our dear, dear, dear friend's home, which we have not been in many, many months. We were eating pizza. We had some beers. All in all, it was a delightful evening.
I noticed you didn't mention play the board game Clue.
The board game Clue sucks a little bit. We had a great time.
Mm-hmm.
We were a little bit confused by the addition that we had because in addition, as you mentioned, to this new gameplay mechanic, Mrs. White is no longer a character.
Oh, yeah.
It's now Dr. Orchid.
Dr. Orchid.
Dr. Orchid.
Right.
So it's now Dr. Orchid, which did not make even the slightest difference in the gameplay because I cannot state
That's
more
the
strongly.
funny thing about like
who the characters are does not matter at all. There's no plot to the game, which makes it interesting as it's being adapted into like things that need to have a plot.
I mean, the one thing I'll say a couple of things really quickly about like what the experience was like because man, you butt up against those rules constantly because like you want to say something. You want to like make an accusation, but you can't make an accusation unless you're in the room where you want to make the accusation.
Right.
So you've got to constantly move your pieces around the room to get where you want to be, and that's frustrating.
Accusation or suspicion?
Sorry. Suspicion. State of suspicion.
We were continually getting confused in the terminology. Accusation is like the final thing that you do in the game.
You can only do it once.
So if you say I accuse, that's it. You have to say I suspect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how everybody knows that you're not making a final accusation. You're just thinking about something.
Right. But you have to be in the room that
Yes.
you are making the suspicion known
Yes.
about.
Because the idea would be that you're doing an investigation
Right.
in that room.
So, can I reveal something to you, my co-host?
Yes.
I really enjoyed it, and I think I might want to play it again at some point.
Well, we'd have to get our own copy because we got to return this copy to our
No,
neighbors.
I know. Here's the thing. I say that, I'm probably not going to want to play it again, but considering that I have spent the better part of 2 decades really repeating the fact that I hate Clue,
Mhm.
I didn't hate Clue. It was kind of fun to play. And I swear to God, like, if I hadn't been playing Wordle for months now, I don't think I would have liked it as much because the mechanic is literally identical.
Yeah.
Like, you talk about how the character names don't matter. None of it actually matters. It doesn't matter that it's murder. It doesn't matter that there are weapons. It doesn't matter that there's character names. You have a bunch of potential combinations of characters.
216.
Right? And you say, I think it's this. And then you find out slowly over the course of the game, oh, well, it's not that one and it's not that one. So you're just whittling down the number of words that it could be.
Mhm.
And then there you have it. And I do love Wordle.
You do love Wordle.
It is one of my new passions.
I wouldn't say I have a passion for Wordle. I would say that I have a love-hate relationship with Wordle because I want to be very good at Wordle and feel that I should be very good at Wordle because
Mhm.
I am a very verbal, literate person.
And yet.
I'm not good at Wordle.
Everybody has their thing, sweetie.
I mean, I'm okay at it. Like, I do play it every day, and I usually get the answer in 4 or 5 guesses. But I am not amazing at Wordle.
So we played this game. I definitely was struck by how often the rules just turned out to be annoying. It became really fun, I thought, to make the suspicions known and then finally to get to the accusation. Like, I actually got way more invested in it than I thought I would. And I literally was one turn away from winning.
Yeah. No,
Like,
you were really into it.
I
Afton and I
knew-
were talking about some
Mhm.
shit, and you were like actually trying to play the game.
Like, I finally understood it.
Yeah.
I felt like I'd been studying French for years and I thought I didn't understand it, and suddenly French people are in front of me speaking French and I was understanding what they were saying. And if you're sitting there talking about podcasts or something, I would tell you, can you please shut up? I'm listening to these people talking French and I actually understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a heck of an analogy I just came up with.
So,
What I'm saying is it was kind of fun.
yeah. Okay. So there's this game. And for reasons best known to themselves, various people through the years have come along and said, we can make that dumb game into something with a plot. Because basically, you have characters.
Yeah.
You have a situation, a murder.
Mhm.
But there's the fun and funny thing is that there is no plot to the game at all. As opposed to like Betrayal at House on the Hill, which we talked about before,
Being the greatest board game.
being the greatest board game
of
ever,
our time.
where there is a mechanic that you don't have to do a plot if you don't want to. You can just like do the things in the game. It's way more fun if you like kind of take on the character and decide and almost do it more like a role-playing game.
Mhm.
And like decide that character is making certain choices and what the characters' interactions with each other are, and it's very fun to play it that way. You don't have to, but it's fun. In this, there's no real way of doing that. Like, there's no interaction between the well, it's not cooperative.
Right.
Betrayal is cooperative up to a point.
Until it's not.
But you just have like a little Parcheesi piece. And that Parcheesi piece has no characterization. Like, the only reason you would know that Mrs. Peacock is a character is because, like, there's a picture of her on the box, you
Mhm.
know? So, anyway, it seems that people came along and said, I can inject plot into this board game and make it into a different format of media. And a number of people have had that thought. So, we're
Mhm.
going to maybe talk about a few of them?
Yeah, well, it's funny. We're actually going to skip over the first one. Normally, we go chronologically.
Yes.
But the first one that we're talking about, the earliest one, is 1985's Clue the movie,
A perfect movie.
which we're going to skip over for now.
Truly perfect film.
You know, actually, while you're saying that the Clue the movie is truly perfect, I do disagree about that because I do have one criticism of it. But I want to talk about a criticism I have of the board game.
Okay.
This is my big criticism. And to me, this is the one thing, and I am sure I'm not the first person to say it, but it is the one thing standing in the way of this being a much more engaging game for me.
Yeah.
You are making these accusations as you are sitting there playing a character who is one of the potential people who did the murder.
Yeah, so sometimes you have to accuse yourself.
Right? And like, for you to accuse yourself and not actually have a mechanic where you know if you were the one that did it, to me, that's a miss. And my understanding is there were early like drafts of the game where that was part of the mechanic.
Yeah.
Where the murderer would know that they're the murderer.
Yeah.
And I just, like, I can see how that would make it a different game.
Yeah.
But I couldn't get invested in it as a story because I didn't feel any connection to the character because, like, I didn't know if I was the murderer or not. I'm just making guesses.
Yeah, and it is interesting that in a number of these versions, the creators have found it necessary to introduce an additional character who is not one of the suspects, precisely to sort of avoid that problem, which is that if anybody could have done it and they're all equally investigating the murder, that makes it kind of hard if anybody's a suspect.
Yeah.
So,
What do you want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about Cluedo, the game show?
yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay, so there was a game show in the UK that ran 4 series from 1990 to 1993, produced by Granada Television, which, I mean, do you want to tell everyone what Granada is known for?
Adventures of Sherlock Holmes.
They're starring Jeremy Brett for ITV. And each week, I'm going to describe it. I actually thought the Wikipedia description was so good. I'm just going to read it. Each week, a reenactment of the murder at the stately home Arlington Grange of a visiting guest was played, and through a combination of interrogating the suspects of whom only the murderer could lie and deduction, celebrity guests had to discover who committed the murder, which of the 6 weapons, not usually the original 6 from the board game, and in which room it was committed, whilst viewers were invited to play along at home.
Yeah.
Every single episode starts the same way, which is you get your host, they introduce you to your guests, and the guests are in pairs. So it's 2 pairs of 2. And usually, it seemed like in the first series, it was like a famous person and a non-famous person.
And the non-famous person was usually someone with like experience in deduction. Like they
Yeah.
were often like police officers, you know,
which was kind of cool.
Which was kind of fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who was the guest in the first episode, the very first episode that you were so excited about?
It was Edward Hardwicke
Yeah.
of Sherlock Holmes fame.
Yeah, like I'm sure there was a Granada connection there.
It was very exciting.
I'm sure
it
there
was very exciting.
There was a different host every single season, but the host would come out, would say, we're going to be looking at this mystery. And then you would watch a little movie starring the cast of actors for that season. And the cast rotated. So every single season, the people playing Mrs. White and Professor Plum, they would all change.
Right.
I would like to read off a selection of people who played these characters over 4 series,
Yes.
if that's okay with you. In series 1, Professor Plum was played by Christopher Tabori. Again,
of Sherlock Holmes fame.
He played Sir Henry Baskerville in The Hound of the Baskervilles, starring Jeremy Brett and Edward Hardwicke. We were delighted to see him because we love that version of The Hound of the Baskervilles.
Yes, and apparently an English actor making a career out of having a bad American accent.
I'm not sure. Now that you're saying that,
do you think he was American?
I think he might be American.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm not sure.
He sounded British doing American.
I mean, he had the funniest joke from
all
everything
the
that we
watched.
And they're also, I'll get to his joke in a minute.
Yeah.
Because there's a mechanic around that.
Okay.
June Whitfield played Mrs. White in the first series. She was the mom on Absolutely Fabulous. Then in series 2, Michael Jaston was Colonel Mustard. We knew him from, what was it, Jane Eyre?
Maybe.
I think it was the Sinead Cusack.
Yeah.
Jane Eyre. He played Rochester. Molly Sugden as Mrs. White from Keeping Up Appearances.
Are you being served?
Did that when we were watching the show.
I got so mad
Literally
at you.
did that when we were watching it. I'm not even going to edit this out.
I was like, what are you talking about?
Almost left me.
Yes.
In series 3, Tom Baker played Professor Plum, which is delightful. Lisette Anthony played Miss Scarlet, and Pam Ferris played Mrs. White.
Yeah.
Is Pam Ferris officially a friend of the pod
now?
now?
I think she is. Yeah, I think
Does
she
this
may
mark
be.
her 3rd time? Children of Men,
Matilda, and Cluedo.
There we go.
There you go.
She's officially a friend of the pod. Series 4, Joanna Lumley was Mrs. Peacock, and Jerry Hall was Miss Scarlet. So they got this revolving cast of characters, which is kind of cool. So you see a little movie. There's always a new character that's introduced who is the victim.
Mm-hmm.
They get murdered. Then all of the actors come out on stage and sit in front of the contestants. In character. And they get to be interviewed by the contestants. There's this whole improv aspect that's part of it, which Like, okay, can I just say this?
Yes.
We kind of loved it.
We loved it. I would go back because we didn't watch every single episode.
No.
We watched kind of a selection across the different series. I would go back and watch the whole thing. It
Yeah.
was really fun.
Especially the first series.
the first
series
one was
seemed
my favorite.
the most fun.
Yeah, that was my favorite.
And like the actors seemed really into it. Like, so I mentioned Christopher DeBory has the best line. He's playing an American as Professor Plum, and someone accuses him of being kind of milquetoast.
Yeah.
And saying that, well, he would use poison to kill someone. I don't see him using something like a gun because that's a little too.
Well, they said like he wouldn't even know how to use it.
Yeah. And he just yells, I'm an American. How can you say I don't know how to use a gun? And he's so offended. But like, that's pure improv.
It was really funny.
And it was fantastic.
It was really funny. And then in one of the series, one of the murder victims, I got like, it was like, you know, it was a who's who of British 1980s television. But one of the actors was the actor who played the son on the original Upstairs Downstairs, but of course he was older because this was from like the early 90s
yeah.
And that was in the 60s and 70s. I just got so excited because I was like, and I was like trying to tell you all of the things that character had done. Like, oh, he knocked up the maid and then he went to war and then he got married to Hazel and that was very controversial because she was middle class and then she died of the Spanish flu. Like it was
very fun for me.
It was very fun.
Yeah. But that's the mechanic, right? And then that whole second half of the episode is the contestants get to interview the characters in character. Then there's always new clues that are revealed, and we get another little mini movie.
Yeah.
And then every single episode ends with one of the duos saying,
they get it.
This is who we think did it, and they're right.
Yeah.
And I feel like our big suspicion is the tapings were much longer than we're given to understand.
Oh, they must have been, because there's no way they could get it from what is presented to us.
I don't know. I just went into the experience kind of cynical. Like, I thought it wasn't going to be good. I was delighted to find out that it was. I was delighted to find out I was delighted.
It was so fun.
But the one thing about it to me that struck me from episode number 1 is like, what is traditionally one of the cheapest forms of TV show to produce?
Game show?
Game shows. And so it's like whoever pitched this said to the studio, we're going to make a game show. And the studio head, whoever's the head of Granada, is going like, great idea. They're cheap and people love them. And says, I have figured out a way to make a game show. Very expensive. We're going to hire actors and we're going to produce a little movie for every single episode. Like, it's just got to be weird. I'd be so interested to know what the budget was because it couldn't have been budgeted like a game show. It had to have been budgeted like a half-hour comedy or something like that.
Yeah, because it was a full-scale movie.
Yeah.
Like, with camera angles and, like, in a big house with people
shot
in
on film,
costumes.
on location.
Yeah.
Like,
it was amazing.
It
was really fun.
Ended up being so much fun, especially that first series.
Yeah, you're definitely going to link to this in the show notes, right? So people can watch it. It's
on
YouTube.
Yeah, if you just go to YouTube and look up Cluedo, like Cluedo TV show, Cluedo game show, you'll find it.
Yeah.
The first 3 series are all on YouTube because of some kind souls. Series 4 doesn't seem to be, except for little clips.
Watch that one.
Yeah, but we saw a lot of people that we were excited to see, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, ended up being the biggest surprise of the episode for me.
Yeah. Do you want me to talk about the musical really briefly? Because I think that's next chronologically.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm actually kind of excited about this because I intentionally did not look up anything about the musical because I wanted to hear what you found.
So,
because I have some assumptions.
I knew there was a musical,
Yep.
Clue the Musical. And I knew that it had been popular with, dinner theater, regional theater, etc.
I was always a something's afoot man.
Right. But I didn't know much about it, and I thought, well, we can watch it. Like, let's watch it. We watch stuff on YouTube all the time. I could not find a watchable full production anywhere.
Do you want to define watchable?
Good.
There it is.
Well, good and shot well.
Well, like good from a recording perspective.
Good from a recording perspective and also good from a performance perspective. We've watched a bad video of a good performance before, but I sort of drew the line at a bad video of a bad community theater performance. I just didn't feel that I could do that.
Can I try to be kinder for a second?
Sure.
Amateur performance.
Amateur performance.
Not necessarily. It's not about good or bad. It's that it's amateur.
Well,
and an amateur performance is an amateur
it's
performance.
Not amazing.
It's so much fun to be in.
Okay. Round about 1993, some cast of characters got this idea of doing this audience participation musical where the ending would always be different based on the same mechanic as the game.
Okay.
This is how I know that there are 216 possible outcomes in the game Clue, because there's 216 possible endings to Clue the musical. Because at the beginning, they have someone from the audience come up on stage and select the 3 Clue cards, and that's the answer to the musical.
How long is the script?
It's not super long, but let me get to it.
Okay.
So this musical went into development in around 1993. It premiered regionally in 1995. It opened off Broadway in 1997. Closed off Broadway, and again, off Broadway usually has a limited run. Off Broadway's not like Broadway where it'll run as long as people are buying tickets and it's making money. Right?
Unless it's like the Fantastics or something
right,
like that.
but off Broadway tends to have a limited run. So like me saying the number of performances that it ran on Broadway doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it did close after 29 performances.
Which doesn't sound like a lot.
Which is not a lot. I would have to imagine that they would have preferred to run longer. This musical has found quite a life in, as you say, amateur school dinner theater types of productions. And so when you look it up, literally if you just Google Clue the musical, the first hit that you get on Google is like the licensing agency where you can license it for performance, which I thought was quite telling, that the first hit was not like any theater producing it or like the yay old famous version that everybody knows. It's like, oh, here's how to license the rights to perform this. But as generally is the case on licensing pages, you can read all about the musical. And this is how I learned that there's 216 possible endings and this sort of audience participation factor. And you can usually listen to little clips from the songs, which you can. So I did. I listened to like 30-second clips from a lot of the songs. And the thing that struck me, which I'm interested to know if you're sort of anticipating what I'm going to say, the thing that struck me is the songs are quite generic. And they're sort of just like about who the characters are. So it's like
there were like 6 I Am songs.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, and there's also a detective character. So there's a song called She's Got a Clue, or She Hasn't Got a Clue, and then there's like a reprise at the end called like She's Got a Clue or something because she solves the mystery.
All right.
So it occurred to me that because you actually don't know what the plot is going to be at the beginning of the performance, none of the songs actually can advance the plot. All of the songs have to be like kind of static songs that are just about who the characters are. So I think that's a real miss.
Yeah.
I think it is the plot serving the gimmick as opposed to the gimmick serving the plot. And I would argue when we get to Clue the movie, the gimmick serves the plot in a really fun way.
Yeah.
My guess would be that was not the case here, because I did hear some clips from the songs. That was my exact reaction. And then I read some of the reviews of the off-Broadway production, because the New York Times did review it. And so I didn't see like the book or the script or anything. But the reviewer for the New York Times did write it was not good. And one of the reasons that it wasn't good was because it was very bland, because, quote, the action has to fit every possible outcome. So not only could the songs not advance the plot, the dialogue couldn't really advance the plot.
Yeah.
Because the action has to fit every possible one of 216 different outcomes.
I can see that being an issue.
I believe that it was. Also, just as a note, this musical was devised by a large number of people. The book was written by Peter DiPietro. I could not find that he wrote many other plays or musicals. He attended Tisch, and he is a professor of new media at the University of Cincinnati.
Okay.
The music is by 3 people. Wayne Barker, who is a real person, a real composer. He was a composer for Peter and the Starcatcher.
Okay.
As well as a number of other laudable, real, actual musical theater things. So he was one person credited with the music. A second person credited with the music was, I believe this is the same person, a woman named Galen Bloom, who, if I tell you that someone's had a real interesting spiritual journey and lives in Santa Fe now, do you get a picture of that person?
Yeah, 100%.
That's her.
Okay.
And the third person who is credited with the music is someone named Vinnie Martucci, about whom I could find nothing at all other than a credit on this musical. The lyrics were written by a guy named Tom Chiodo, who appears
Why do I know that name?
I don't think you do,
Okay.
because he appears to be someone who works in like corporate communications.
Okay.
So again, an interesting group. I could not possibly say like what that collaboration process looked like and why 3 different people are credited for the music. I doubt that those 3 people were like songwriting partners. So I don't know.
They all worked on it.
They all worked on it
Yeah.
at one time or another. So I wouldn't like to say. So that's Clue the musical. It got very bad reviews and is apparently not good. I can see how it would be fun to do.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I
it
mean?
makes sense.
Like, it makes sense that it would be fun for the actors. It's probably pretty fun for the audience, especially if it's, a smaller scale production. But I would say, like, as a piece of art, my guess, given the information that I have, is that it's not enormously successful.
I wonder if anyone has ever thought, I see potential in this in terms of direction and performance. Like, we can actually make it something good. But the thing we're going to do is we are going to pretend that there are multiple options for the ending.
Yeah.
But really, we have manufactured it so that there is only going to be one ending chosen.
Yeah.
And we can do it such that that is the ending that makes sense.
Well, that's how 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee works, right? Because there is audience participation and
Sure.
there is a spelling bee component, but the same person always wins in the plot
Right.
of the musical, even though there is some improvisation around the spelling bee.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
there's a way to do it.
Right.
They just didn't choose to do that.
Yeah. And like, to be fair, I know I made a crack before about how I'm a Something's Afoot man, and which is a show that most people have not heard of, but it is a really, really fun murder mystery musical that I got to do in high school that I really enjoy. But like, to be fair, it's not based on a board game that has a mechanic of lots of different possibilities.
Sure.
It's based on Agatha Christie, which is, no, you read the story and you find out who did it.
Yeah, of course.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
So like, even though they're both murder mystery comedy musicals,
It's not quite the
the
same.
mechanic has to be different. Like, if you're doing Clue, you have to embrace the mechanic. So I guess I feel like maybe, like, what's the option? Is there a better version of it, or should they just not have done it?
They should just not have done it.
That's what it seems like.
It does not seem like this group of people had any business writing a musical.
I don't know. Like, I just wonder if
Their
maybe
their reach exceeded their grasp, I think.
I wonder if there's anything they could have done. I haven't put that much thinking into it, but I'm wondering if there's anything that someone could do to embrace a game mechanic, but drastically whittle down the number of possible outcomes.
Yeah.
So that you could craft a more engaging show.
Sure.
wonder.
I mean, Mystery of Edwin Drood has audience participation
Uh-huh.
and is a musical and has like a number of different endings.
Yeah.
Because it's the same kind of thing. Like, the audience like solves the mystery at the end. I don't know that musical super well, but my understanding is the actors have just memorized however many different endings there are, and they just do the one that's appropriate for that performance.
Mhm.
But again, it's not 216
Yeah.
different outcomes. It's like 5.
It seems like the show is a really weird combination of incredibly ambitious, but also incredibly unambitious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you like to move on?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so there's one more thing we got to talk about before we get to the movie. There was a miniseries made of this in 2011 that was on the Hub. I mentioned that Hasbro was going to come back later. My finger has been so far from this aspect of the pulse of popular culture for these many years. I didn't know about the Hub. I didn't know about like Discovery Kids and like the Hub as being a competitor to like Nickelodeon.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the Hub was a TV channel
Okay.
that was partly owned by Hasbro, who currently owns Clue.
Oh.
So it makes perfect sense that you're a game company who owns a TV show. You're going to look at all your IP and try to figure out what can we turn into something.
Sure.
So the decision was made to make a miniseries based on Clue. It came out in 2011. It is geared squarely at tweens, I would say.
It's very Degrassi.
Very. So much. I mean, it's very Canadian.
It's very Canadian.
Like, it seems like it's an American production, but like, boy, it doesn't. It feels like a Canadian show.
Yeah.
Because it is shot in
Because
Canada,
everyone's Canadian.
and everyone's Canadian. It was created by Raven Metzner. It starred 6 different young actors as I'm not going to go through all of them, but I will mention the characters. So there's Seamus, Whitney Burroughs, Agnes Peabody. Sorry, I live outside of Boston. Agnes Peabody, Liz Handley, Dimitri Grant, and Lucas Morgenstern. And you might think, WTF? Who are these assholes? And I would say, oh no, Seamus is Mr. Green.
They
Why
all
is
have a color very subtly.
Yeah. Why is Seamus Mr. Green?
Oh, because he likes money.
Yeah, likes money. He's got a job and he loses his job and he likes money. He's got a big poster of a dollar bill in his bedroom. Whitney Burroughs is Mrs. White. Why is she Mrs. White?
She wears a white sweater.
Pretty much it. Agnes Peabody is. Did I say it right that time?
I don't know.
Agnes Peabody is Mrs. Peacock.
She's got a blog.
She got a blog called like The Peacock, or something like that.
Did you mention these are all teens?
I said, yeah, these are kids.
Okay.
These are children.
These are young teens.
Yeah. Liz Handley is Miss Scarlet.
She's got red hair.
That's like dyed red
like
hair.
Red hair.
Yep. Dimitri Grant is Colonel Mustard.
This
is my favorite one.
Like he played a video game called like Mustard.
It was like called Operation Mustard or something like that,
Yeah.
and he was the only one on his server who had achieved the rank of Colonel.
Oh my god.
And his phone case is yellow.
I don't think it was even a server. I think you're going a little too modern here. Was it a game server or was it just the video game?
No, it was like on his server.
Okay.
That's been 2011 is not too old for that kind of thing.
Okay.
Lucas Morgenstern is Professor Plum because he's a real smart kid and he's in a group that's like Mensa.
Yeah.
But it's like the Plum Institute or something like that.
Okay.
And Seamus, a bunch of times in the first episode, calls him Professor Plum.
It's really, sweetie, I got to tell you something about this show.
Yeah, what's that?
It's so stupid.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
know it is children's entertainment for children, but it is deeply stupid.
I mean, I'm just going to call back really quickly. We just did an episode on Heidi
Yes.
where we watched a recent children's TV show about Heidi.
Yes.
Yeah, it was for kids, but I came out of the experience not necessarily like enjoying it,
Yeah.
but I respected it.
You're not talking about Heidi for dogs, are you?
No, Heidi Fourpaws? No, not Heidi Fourpaws. I'm talking about the CG one.
Okay.
The 3D one, the one that like is based on all the character designs from the anime in the 70s.
Yeah.
It was like a really sweet show
It was
that I would
okay.
have no problem with my kid watching one day.
Listen, there are a number of children's entertainments. If Daniel Tiger is on and our 2-year-old leaves the room, I don't turn it off.
No.
I love Daniel Tiger.
Yeah. Daniel Tiger's great. I got no beef with Daniel
no beef
Tiger.
with Daniel.
This is not good though.
We aren't even watching Bluey yet because I actually want to watch Bluey and
Yeah.
I don't think he has the attention span to pay attention to the plot, but I hear it's great.
Yeah. Can I just so we only watched one episode of it because that was all we needed to see.
Yeah.
I only have like 2 points about this that I think are worth talking about. Do you have anything?
No.
All right, so here's my 2 things. First of all, the show gave me whiplash in the beginning of it because all these kids, including a lot of other kids, are all at a function at a hotel, like a fundraiser, and all the main characters all happen to be outside on a balcony at the same time. So they look up in a hotel room and witness these 2 guys seemingly kill a dude with a candlestick.
Yeah.
They all witness it. And so it becomes, we are now crime-solving teens.
Yes.
And that happens in 7 minutes.
Yes.
From this show
It was
goes
about
from
7.5 minutes.
It was 7.5 minutes. They are on the fucking case.
They go from regular teens at a party to private eye gumshoes in the course of 7.5 minutes.
It is too soon to do that. But my second point is, I question the decision to do it at all. Because to me, like we're talking about the mechanic of Clue. The basic mechanic of Clue is one of the 6 main characters did the bad thing.
Yeah. The television show of I Know What You Did Last Summer is closer to Clue than this.
Like it just takes all the fun out of it.
Yeah.
Like I'm not watching something called Clue to watch 6 people who clearly had nothing to do with it try to figure out what rando had something to do with it.
Who done it, if you will.
Yeah, but I don't want a who done it. I want a which done it.
That's right.
That's what Clue is. Clue is not a who done it. Clue is a which done it.
Yep.
You gave me options.
A which.
And you need to tell me which of these people did it. That's funny. That's a different joke than I was making.
Do you want to move on?
This sucked. I felt really
sucks
bad.
So bad. We only watched one episode, but we didn't need to see any more.
All right. What is your history with the movie Clue? Because as I said at the very beginning, your love for this movie eclipses mine.
When I was in about 5th grade, a friend of mine said, "Have you seen this movie called Clue?" And I said, "No." And they said, "You should watch it." And I said, "I will." And then on our weekly Blockbuster run, I said to my parents, "Can I get this movie out?" And they said, "Sure."
What year is this about? Early 90s?
1995.
Okay.
I'm going to guess. I was in 5th grade. I remember I was in 5th grade, so that would be 1995. And loved it. Just thought it was so funny and watched it with my brothers. There were so many things in it that we did not understand.
Yeah.
But we just kept renting it. Like every time we went to Blockbuster, we would rent it. And then finally my parents bought it for us on VHS. And I believe that VHS tape is still in my parents' house. I think if you go upstairs in my parents' house, you will see that tape.
I believe it.
And it's just been one of my favorite movies ever since 1995. I would say it has been on my top 5 movies consistently since 1995. There are certain things in this movie that, I mean, I've probably watched it 100 times, 200 times. There are things in this movie that I will still laugh out loud at, as you witnessed.
Oh, yeah. You definitely did that thing that I feel like traditionally people hate this. And I feel like I've done it and you have not enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But I think everyone has had the experience of sitting next to a person while they're watching the movie, and that person is saying every line in the movie as it happens.
I only did it a little.
No, you did it the whole time.
I did not.
You did it for an hour and a half.
That's not true.
And I didn't have a problem with it. I'm not criticizing. I'm just acknowledging.
I think I also realized on this viewing that this movie is my route of laughing at people falling down.
Yeah.
Because my very, very, very favorite scene in the whole movie is when Tim Curry, playing Wadsworth the Butler, who's a character we'll get to in a second, gets hit on the head with a candlestick and falls down.
Right after yelling the immortal line.
I'm shouting. Boom, clunk.
Well, no, isn't it right after he says, we need to figure out
who did it and where and with what? And someone says, there's no need to shout. And he says, I'm not shouting. All right, I am. I'm shouting. Boom, clunk. And he falls down.
I'm watching you laugh at it, and it's not even playing right now. I've lost you. I've lost my co-host.
So anyway, I think that's why I find people falling down really funny.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Should I talk about this movie for a second?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, 1985. I love you so much. 1985. Some people had an idea. One of those people was John Landis, who I don't love talking about.
Did you do a bad thing?
I mean...
You don't have to talk about it.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it. Anyway, John Landis decides we got to make a movie out of this. And he came up with the story with a guy named Jonathan Lynn, who I delight in talking about, because Jonathan Lynn is just a really funny British guy who directed a bunch of movies and was an actor himself. Here are 3 movies that he made. Nuns on the Run.
That's a funny movie.
Yeah.
I've seen that movie.
The Whole Nine Yards.
Haven't seen that one.
From what I remember, I think I haven't seen it in 22 years. I think I saw it when it came out, but I remember it being kind of funny. But he also wrote and directed My Cousin Vinny.
There you go.
Which is a goddamn stone cold classic.
That's
and
true.
I love it so much.
And apparently he gets confused with Jonathan Demme a lot, because every article that I was reading about Clue, there was a correction at the end that was the original version of this article said this was directed by Jonathan Demme. It was directed by Jonathan Lynn.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
People are stupid. Here's the other thing I like about him, and it ties back to My Cousin Vinny. In 1967, he originated the role of Muddle the tailor in Fiddler in the West End production of Fiddler on the Roof.
Who did? Jonathan Lynn?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
But the cool thing about that is who's in My Cousin Vinny? Austin Pendleton, who originated the role of Muddle on Broadway.
That's very adorable.
Never stops being charming for me.
Very adorable.
I'm just saying, My Cousin Vinny, I love My Cousin Vinny more than Clue.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoy Clue. I'll watch it anytime. It is a very, very funny movie. My love for it does not extend to the rafters the way yours does.
Yeah.
But that isn't because I think it's not good.
Do you think on the set of My Cousin Vinny, they would have cast parties and get drunk and the two of them would sing Wonder of Wonders, Miracle of Miracles together?
I have for years assumed that it happened. And Joe Pesci just sitting in the corner going,
what the fuck
is this? Or getting super into it.
Or getting into it. Yeah.
I don't know that Joe Pesci doesn't like musical theater.
Marissa Tomei's a legit Broadway person.
Yeah.
So she probably
deserved her Oscar. She did.
I fed her floor salad one time.
But let's talk about who's in this movie.
If you want to hear that story, I'll tell it some other time.
But anyway, Lynn and John Landis came up with the story. Jonathan Lynn wrote the screenplay and ended up directing it. I mean, we got to talk about the cast. Because, it's weird. Should we talk about the plot for a second?
Sure.
All of these people are invited to a mansion. They're all given code names. They find out they're all being blackmailed.
It's the 1950s.
Yep. They find out they're all being blackmailed by someone. There is a butler there named Wadsworth who is kind of their guide for the evening.
Yeah.
the person who Mr. Body, the man they think is their host, shows up, dies, and then we spend the rest of the movie running from room to room trying to figure out who killed him and who killed the increasing number of dead characters that keep getting introduced in the movie.
And then J. Edgar Hoover shows up because, it's the 50s.
Well, he doesn't show up. He just calls.
He calls.
Yeah.
So can I just talk really quickly about the gimmick?
Yeah.
So word on the street, like this actually happened, right?
They actually did this. This was part of the original inception of the project, and they actually did it.
Because I have never seen this, of course, other than on videotape.
Right.
When the movie was released, they shot 3 different endings.
They shot 4 different endings.
They shot 4 different endings.
They cut one of them because it wasn't funny.
Okay, well, fair
Where
enough.
it turns out Wadsworth is the one who killed everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
That seems like not funny. They shot, for the purposes of this, I'll say they shot 3 different endings. They shot the movie in such a way that any one of those 3 endings work if you go back and look, which I think is kind of brilliant.
Mm-hmm. It would almost be like if they tried to do 216 of them, that would have been too many.
That would have been too many, but they could make it work for 3.
3 is a great number. 3 is a magic number.
They shot 3 different endings, and apparently when this was shown in the theater, it was like basically random. You might get any one of the 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it was different from showing to showing,
no,
if it was different from theater to theater.
Well, because it was in the days of film.
Right, that's what I'm thinking. Like
Yeah.
in the days of film, it wouldn't be easy to switch back and forth between them.
Theaters were sent different versions of the movie. So if you went to a theater, chances are you were only seeing that version of it.
So you'd have to go to a different theater.
Exactly. And apparently, some theaters told people at the beginning which ending they were going to get.
That's dumb.
But the whole thing seems kind of dumb to me.
It's a little dumb. So, but when it came out on VHS tape, which is where this movie had a true second life, right? Because it did not do well, as I understand it, in the theater in 1985.
I know critically it didn't do that well. I feel like it made some money, but yeah, it wasn't a big hit or anything.
But it had a cult following.
Sure,
is what I'm saying.
From video.
If you watch the videotape, you see all 3, and there's sort of a little interstitial thing that said that's how it could have happened, but how about this? And then they get to the 3rd ending and it says, but here's how it really happened, which makes sense because the 3rd ending is clearly the best and funniest one. And side note, I didn't really think about it until this viewing. The flames on the side of my face line is in the 3rd ending. So you only had a 1 in 3 chance if you went to see this movie in the theater of seeing flames on the sides of my face.
I was about to say
terrible.
I was about to say it's the funniest scene in this movie. It's one of the funniest scenes in any movie. Can we talk about this cast?
Yes.
Holy shit, what a cast. Oh my fucking God, they're all amazing.
They're all amazing, and we were getting simultaneously inspired and depressed by looking up how old each of them were, because I like a movie that everybody's in their 40s or late 30s or 40s, because it's you don't need a bunch of young people to have a great movie.
Yeah.
But also we were Tim Curry's 39 in this movie.
Yeah, he's literally our age, and that's kind of weird. Can I tell you something? Tim Curry was not originally going to be Wadsworth.
Yeah.
Originally, I forget who it was going to be, but whoever was chosen for Wadsworth died before the production.
Oh, God, who was it?
I can't remember. Doesn't matter. Because the second person they wanted, but it was decided that they wouldn't be a big enough draw for American audiences, Rowan Atkinson was almost Wadsworth.
Yeah.
And you try to tell me that also wouldn't have been great.
I literally was about to say, yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. But I know that Tim Curry is,
Tim Curry is one of my
a classic performance.
favorite actors.
Yeah.
And much of that comes from this movie. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and we're also spoiling. We're going to spoil,
we're gonna spoil
everything.
Okay. So Tim Curry's playing Wadsworth the Butler, who is obviously a character not from the board game.
Mm-hmm. Well, can I challenge that for a second?
Sure.
I think Wadsworth is a character from the board game.
He's you.
He's the rules.
He's the rules.
I'm just going to go ahead and say this, and I'm probably going to bring it up a number of times in our conversation. I think this movie is a brilliant adaptation of a board game.
Yeah.
I don't just mean that it's a fun movie.
No, I mean,
as an adaptation of a
it.
board game, it actually does everything that should be, including it has rules.
He tells you the rules.
Literally, there is someone explaining the rules to the characters as they're going, and they're all getting frustrated with the mechanic of the story.
Yes.
Which is exactly the same as you sitting around with your friends getting frustrated with the mechanic of the game.
It's very meta.
And I think it's kind of brilliant. So I would argue that Wadsworth is a character. He is the rule. rules.
Wadsworth is a character. He is the rules. Played by Tim Curry. Okay, let's go. Should we just like run through this cast really quickly? Madeline Kahn as Mrs. White.
Mm-hmm. I love Madeline Kahn so
Eileen
much.
Brennan as Mrs. Peacock.
Mm-hmm. I have them all listed if you want me to.
I think I can do it from memory. Leslie Ann Warren as Miss Scarlet.
Okay.
I do not remember the name of the actress who plays Yvette the maid. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I didn't even know you were going to go to the secondary characters.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying, like, if I'm going through the... Okay.
Colleen Camp is Yvette the maid.
There you go. Martin Mull as Colonel Mustard.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher Lloyd as Professor Plum. Michael McKean as Mr. Green. And
Yeah, that's all of them.
That's all of them. That's
Yeah.
the 6.
And then, as I say, there's a number of secondary characters.
Yes,
Like
the cook and the maid and J. Edgar Hoover and the cop.
J.
and
Edgar
the
Hoover, who
telegraph
never
girl.
appears in the movie. You keep bringing him up, but
No,
he
he
never
comes in at
appears.
the end.
That's not J. Edgar Hoover.
Yes, it is.
You think Howard Hessman's playing J. Edgar Hoover?
In the third ending, he is.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. We just had to do a thing that we've had to do twice recently. We had to do it in our I Know What You Did Last Summer episode. Hey, sweetie, would you like to tell everyone what just happened to you? She literally can't talk. So hard is she laughing. She's seen this movie 100, 200 times, as she said. Howard Hessman's in it, playing someone from the FBI, playing the chief from the FBI. Her understanding for years has been that character is literally J. Edgar Hoover. And I just went on at length trying to make my case for how he's not J. Edgar Hoover. He's just another person who works at the FBI. And you got very angry at me and started throwing pens.
I'm very sorry. I misunderstood the movie.
So anyway, J. Edgar Hoover does not appear. This all started because I said J. Edgar Hoover does not appear in this movie, and you were like, wait, what the fuck? What are you talking about?
I misunderstood. When he says J. Edgar Hoover always gets his man, thought he was talking about himself for nearly 30 years. I misunderstood this film.
Now, here's the thing. All it's going to take is for someone to say, Jeremy, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, Ari was right the whole time. And
I'm still not ruling that out as a possibility.
I am just going to go on record and say I don't expect that to happen. But if it does, I'll
You'll
fucking
feel
own it.
really bad.
I will, A, feel terrible. B, debate re-editing this episode and re-releasing it, which I won't do. And C, I will apologize profusely in an upcoming episode. Now, if our track record is any indication, I'm right, because the other time we had to do this was because you misunderstood the plot. The difference is you misunderstood the plot of a movie you'd never seen before.
Once. This is falling apart. This is no good.
I'm just saying, if it was J. Edgar Hoover,
No, I get it.
when he shows up at the door pretending to be the evangelist,
I
they would
get
have
it.
recognized him
Also,
because he's J. Edgar Hoover.
it did just occur to me, just historically, J. Edgar Hoover didn't have a beard.
Yeah, that was one of my points as well.
Okay.
Let me get back to my original thesis, that this is a goddamn fucking brilliant adaptation of a board game. I was debating whether we needed to play the board game before we watched the movie, and I'm really glad we did, because it genuinely made this one of the best viewings I've ever had of this movie.
Yeah.
I didn't expect them to be so thoughtful about saying, we're going to try to replicate the experience of playing a game.
Sure.
So none of them, they're all the code names.
Yeah.
But one of the things I love about the movie is not winky at all about how it's Clue.
Yeah.
Like when they introduce all the murder weapons, it's dead serious.
Yeah.
Right? At no point are they mugging or winking to the audience that they know what's going on.
Yeah, like the gun, like people have been murdered. It's like they're horrified.
Yeah.
The gun is a gun. Like it's very scary.
Like, I feel like in the 2011 miniseries, we watched one episode of it and there were like 3 different things in it
Yeah.
that were all just really, really overt references to the fact that, like, oh, we're doing an adaptation of a board game.
Yeah.
And I don't care for that. Like, the characters were actually characters in a story.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened to be a really fun adaptation of the board game Clue. So everyone's got a name. There is literally someone explaining rules for the evening. Eileen Brennan is amazing, which is not really a note about how it's a good adaptation of a board game. I just feel like it's worth mentioning as many times as we can.
This is the type of movie that on every viewing you should just watch one character. And I think for both of us on this viewing, it was Mrs. Peacock for some reason. And we just really, really picked up what she was putting down.
Like, never not funny.
Yeah.
Every single thing she does is the funniest thing in the movie. But it even got to it more. Like, we had just had the experience like 2 nights before of playing the game and getting really frustrated when we got it wrong or wanted to make an accusation and couldn't, or made the wrong accusation. And there's that scene like towards the end of the movie where they all go, maybe Mr. Body killed the cook.
And everyone goes, yes!
And someone goes, how? And like,
Oh.
that's how it feels to make an accusation in this game.
Yeah.
Like, that's actually how it feels. And everyone is getting so actively frustrated throughout the movie about the mystery.
Yes.
And they're not getting frustrated in a thriller way. They're getting frustrated in a board game way.
Yes.
Like people playing a board game.
Yeah.
This movie was smarter than it deserved to be.
Yeah.
And I would even go so far. Can I give a TED Talk for a second?
Sure.
Here's one of the reasons why I think video game movies don't work. Because video game movies all try to do the same thing, which is they say, we're going to take these characters or we're going to tell the story that's happening on screen. But the problem is the whole point of a video game is that, like, the central conceit of a video game is you are putting yourself into the main character.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not how movies work.
Yeah.
And I've never seen a video game movie embrace that as an idea within the movie.
Yes, I know this is a thing of yours.
Yeah, and I've seen, like, I saw Doom. And I didn't hate Doom. And Doom has kind of a cool thing where, like, it goes first person at the end. So what you're seeing looks like the game. But that's not what I'm talking about. It's not about the idea of the audience participating in the story. And I would love to see someone do that. With this, they made the closest thing to what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like, this is a movie that is about playing a board game. Even though it's not technically about playing the board game, it's about a murder mystery.
Yeah.
And it's like the script is just so much better than I think it has any right to be. And this could be the most forgettable thing if it wasn't for the fact that the script is so good. But then on top of that, the performances are all amazing.
Yeah.
What a movie.
Yeah, what a movie.
I know I've been talking at length.
Yeah.
And I know this is one of your favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
I did mention before that I have one criticism of this movie.
Sure.
I guess my only problem with this movie is it's not assembled very well. Like, it's kind of a messy movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there is a lot of action in it, and I just don't think it's put together particularly well. Like, things just don't... I just feel like action doesn't cut in a very good way in it. I feel like it's kind of messy. But the thing that elevates it are the performances in the script.
Yeah.
And I think it makes its way past that. And maybe if Jonathan Lynn was making it like 10 years later, when he had more experience as a filmmaker, it would have felt different.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder about that. I really, really wonder about that.
Sure. I don't know that I share that criticism. I kind of think it's a little bit choppy on purpose. Like, because I think sometimes some of the cuts, like, they had to do it the way that they did it to increase the mystery and, like, I don't know, serve the 3 different endings, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't agree with that criticism necessarily.
That's okay. You don't have to.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, like, there's more that I could say. Like, I could just go through and quote the whole movie. I could, talk about some of my favorite scenes, which I already talked about, when Wadsworth gets hit on the head with the candlestick.
Yeah. I have been trying this entire episode to try to make a way in to bring up communism just to set you up.
Yeah.
But I haven't been able to do it.
It's just a red herring.
Yeah.
But honestly, like, I feel good about where we landed with this tonight. Like, we laughed, we cried. I feel like I'm at peace with now understanding the full plot of the movie Clue. We got a lot out at the beginning of the episode. We had a rough week with some loss in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I kind of just like to leave it there.
Yeah.
I feel okay with what we've explored tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you. Would you like to do some quadrants?
Yeah, let's do that. I'm not going to do chronological order.
Okay.
1990 game show. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Oddly, yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like,
sure
yes.
they did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
I think it absolutely embraces the game.
Yes.
Like, not the movie. That's actually one of the things I found really refreshing is that the movie is this classic for us, but it's not like the movie informed all the other things.
I don't think it informed any of them.
Yeah. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Was it successful?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a great game show.
The musical. Do you think they cared about the source material?
From what I can gather,
Mm-hmm.
no. I think they cared about the gimmick.
Yeah. Was it successful?
By all accounts, no.
Yeah, 29 performances does not sound like enough.
Does not
performances.
Sound like a success.
2011's Clue miniseries, which admittedly we did not watch all of. Do you think they cared about the source material?
I do not know.
I do not at even a little. I think someone wanted to make a show about teens solving crimes, and then decided to graft Clue onto it, I don't think it started the other way.
Yeah.
Was it successful?
No.
1985's Clue the movie. Do you think it was made by people who cared about the source material?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes,
I do.
Was it successful?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
There we are.
Yes.
So that's how it could have ended. But what if it ended like this? So was it successful? No, fuck that movie. It was stupid fucking movie. But here's how it really ended. Was it successful?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's so good.
100%.
It's so good.
Yep.
It's so good. All right, well, this has been Adapt or Perish.
We didn't rehearse that at all.
If you'd like to find us online, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AdaptCast. You can join our groups on Facebook and Goodreads, and you can also find and follow me on Letterboxd. You can also hear my other show, Multiplex Time Machine, that I host with my best friend Ian, all about the movies of 2007. If you have anything to say that's longer than a tweet, you can always send an email to adapterperishcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, there are 3 great ways you can do it. First, tell a friend. Second, a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice would be greatly appreciated. Third, we are on Patreon. This show will always be free, but if you become a patron, you can get access to Adapt or Perish Plus, our bonus show that releases every other week between episodes of this show, and our patron-only Slack community. It's been a lot of fun, and all the details are at patreon.com/adaptcast.
I hated her so much. Flames on the sides of my face, heaving breaths. How was that?
Did you know that was improvised?
I believe it.
Like, is it even a little surprising that she improvised that?
No. Bye, everybody.